What's up, guys, and happy Black History Month. So today I'm going to come to you very briefly to talk about this book my dad introduced me to. It's The Half Has Never Been Told, Slavery and the Making of American Capitalism. This is a phenomenal book, and I know a lot of people are probably tired of hearing about slavery, and they say, well, there's more to us than slavery, but this book unpacks so much, and I think it's important for people to understand the role that slavery played in the United States being considered the superpower that it is today. Basically, the wealth of this country was built off the backs of chattel slavery, those people suffering, and this book does a great job of breaking all that down. And I'll just read the back for you. So, Americans tend to cast slavery as a pre-modern institution, the nation's original sin, perhaps, but isolated in time and divorced from America's later success. But to do so robs the millions of suffering in bondage of their full legacy. As historian Edward E. Baptist reveals in The Half Has Never Been Told, the expansion of slavery in the first 8 decades after American independence drove the evolution and modernization of the United States. In the span of a single lifetime, the South grew from a narrow coastal strip of worn-out tobacco plantations to a continental cotton empire. The United States grew into a modern industrial and capitalist economy, told through intimate slave narratives, plantation records, newspapers, and words of politicians, entrepreneurs, and escaped slaves. The Half Has Never Been Told offers a radical new interpretation of American history. There's so much in this book. It opens up and it talks about a coffle. And a coffle is basically how they would chain slaves together. And these slaves would walk hundreds of miles chained together, so they would have to be in sync. And when I got to one section where he talked about a pregnant mother, can you imagine being chained, having to walk in sync, and being pregnant hundreds of miles? It talks about the breakup of family. It talks about slaves on the auction block. And that's the interesting about this. That's the interesting thing about this. One of the many interesting things about this book is it gives the personal slave narratives. It gives the perspectives from politicians and government. It has records. So there's so many resources in this book. And it's really important for people to understand the United States would not be what it is if it weren't for chattel slavery. And although this book focuses on the United States, it just shows how that institution just impacted the Western Hemisphere as a whole. And one of the many things that he did is, and I feel was very intentional and important, I think, was his attempt at paying homage to the sacrifices of these slaves. Because when you get down to it and you really start to break down what chattel slavery really is, it was a lot. And so he uses the body parts as each chapter. So the introduction starts with the heart, and then feet, heads, right hand, left hand, tongues, breath, seed, blood, backs, arms, and then the afterword is the corpse. So he was very intentional in his writing. I think he did a fantastic job of opening up the reader's mind to not only understanding the suffering, but also understanding the contributions and knowing that the United States would not be what it is without chattel slavery. And it's an uncomfortable conversation to have, but it's something that needs to be had, and we need to make sure that we continue to have these conversations and keep their legacies alive. We owe that much to them. So the last thing I wanted to read is from the afterword, and it says, "As I learned in my research, there was a concrete relationship between African American suffering and economic growth. The more that enslaved people were tortured, the more efficiently they produced the new global economy's most essential commodity. through the cotton enslaved people made, cotton they were forced to make in an ever more productive fashion, African Americans enriched almost all people in the world, almost all people, but not themselves. So I highly recommend this book, written by Edward E. Baptist. I believe it was published in 2014, but please give this book a read. There's so much information in it, and it definitely gives you a different perspective. And for those that don't know, you will understand the sacrifices that blacks made, slaves made, chattel slavery made to what the United States is today. So until the next video, peace out, guys.